Well, we all know that Asia is the cradle of major religious traditions, both the non-Christians as well as the religions of Abraham, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. All these religions have their own sacred books and they have their own narratives. And I will no longer go into this because you're all familiar with the religions of Asia. And I suppose your readings and your study have made you also equally familiar with the positive as well as negative elements. Today in my sharing, it will be a great departure from the traditional or the usual presentation of interreligious dialogue, which was my mantra in my younger years. The triple dialogue of the FABC and also the triple dialogue of the Vatican documents, particularly Dialogue and Proclamation, or the document by the World Council of Churches, Dialogue between and among peoples of living faiths. So I will not, those were no longer my mantra. It used to be, because I have a new mantra now in shaping relationship between and among religions as well as people of faith. My point of departure will be the end. The end is sight, or the end vision. Most people, when they speak of end, they speak of eschatology. Well, eschatology is good. Everybody becomes happy in the new earth and the new heaven. No, I'm speaking of that, not that end, or the Messianic period. And speaking of the apocalypse rather, and the apocalyptic literature, and perhaps this apocalypse perspective will give us a reading and interpretations of the sacred texts of major religions, both Abrahamic and non-Christians, as well perhaps also changing religions. Yesterday, I participated in the conference, what do you call that, the small group conferences, and I attended particularly the conference of Marichel and Father Chris, because I found the topic fascinating, and this will be post-biblical hermeneutic, but the title of Marichel is equally fascinating, and this will be climate change, changing religions. And I added not only changing religions, but changing also our reading and interpretation of our sacred texts. The first scenario, in 2007, this is very recent, the Ecumenical Patriarch of Constantinople, Patriarch Bartholomew, invited religious leaders from all confessions as well as non-Christian religions of Asia, of the world, to make a pilgrimage. The word pilgrimage is very important because it is something sacred to all our religious traditions, both Christians and non-Christians. But this time around, it is not the traditional pilgrimage of going to Makkah, or going to Jerusalem, or going to certain ashram or sacred places. The invitation of Patriarch Bartholomew was to go to the middle of nowhere, somewhere in Greenland, and see the great glacier meltdown. There you, hindi klaro, no? The glacier melting down. And behold, these religious leaders saw the meltdown of the great glacier, and paraphrasing Caesar's De Bello Gallico, they came, they saw, and they were conquered. They were transformed. And Patriarch Bartholomew said, we need now to rethink our own morality, our own understanding of sin, and we have to rethink also the message of our religion. This meltdown will happen not in the next 50 or 100 years that we have known scientifically, but new findings of scientists, particularly climate change scientists, do say that this will happen in the next 20 years. Simulation of what will happen in this great meltdown will be the Philippines with 7,200 islands will become 300 only. So, if you want to graphic presentation of a simulation of the great effect of the meltdown, it will be the Philippines being reduced simply to the higher lands, uplands, and about 300 islands. But the effect of global warming, the effect of climate change will not be only the great flood that will be akin to the accounts or narratives of Genesis during the time of Noah, but rather it will also affect the highlands. It will affect not only the planet, but there was a presence also, there is a presence now that is now kept secret of the discovery of the methane gas in the Arctic. The methane gas in the Arctic that is threatening to explode. So I suppose with that kind of reality, we have to reconfigure not only our understanding of our religion, our understanding of our message, but our understanding also of relationship between and among nations, between and among religions, between and among peoples of faith, and between and among all peoples of goodwill. We speak today of this kind of catastrophe and disaster, and perhaps there's a need of really building a new ark. This time it will not only be Noah building the ark in that narrative, but its religions, and their own differences. Like a jigsaw puzzle is an important part in building that particular ark to save not only the planet, but save humanity as well as a different species, our differences. So I'll show you a series of slides. We poison the air, we cut all the trees, we poison the water, and it's not only flood, but also typhoons, volcanic eruptions. This will be the new normal, the new apocalyptic literature being written today that will shape the new relationship between and among religions. That will be Haiyan. And saving the planet, saving the earth is a priority task and mission for all religions and people of faith, including those who are non-believers. The second very important reality or phenomenon that will shape the relationships of peoples of faith, no longer in the triple dialogue, but rather the phenomenon of extremism. It has become real to many, especially in the Western world, when Professor Samuel Huntington published in 1996 his seminal work on Clash of Civilizations. That indeed, no longer politics, no longer economics, no longer ideology that will divide people, but rather civilizations, and he proposed class of civilizations. In the early year 2000, the United Nations responded that it's not class of civilizations, but rather alliance of civilizations that should characterize relationship between nations, religions, and peoples. But since 9/11, when the waves of extremism surfaced, it became a paramount issue that all of us need to confront. St. John Paul II, during his visit in the Umayyad Mosque in Damascus, that will be prior to the Civil War, said, is it possible to present our narratives, our religions, no longer in opposition to one another, but rather as partners in rebuilding the earth? And today, more than ever, we see this phase of extremism in the Middle East. ISIS or Daesh in Iraq, in Syria, or attacks in Europe, in England, in France, in Brussels, in Madrid, attacks in the United States, and even I speak today, there is a raging war down south in my place, not in my place, an hour and a half from my place, the city of Marawi, that has been going on for the past 6 weeks, and the destruction of the city of Marawi, a picture of Mosul as well as Aleppo. Yes, extremism is a reality that all religions need to confront today in our relationship. Perhaps the question and the challenge being asked of us today is that are we able to draw the line between tolerance and intolerance, between exclusivism and inclusivism, between life and death, between fellowship and enmity? And that is very important line that we need to draw for people of faith and religions also. Unless we are able to draw the line, we just be simply talking, and not only talking, perhaps even enjoying each other's company, but nothing really happens down there on the ground. That is Marawi. 230,000 people of Marawi evacuated. It is mind-boggling, you see. The entire city, except for a few thousands, have been evacuated, the city of Mercado. The destruction, you see. And that is the challenge of being able to draw the line. I borrowed that picture, you see. President the Abrahamic faith. This is drawing the line, fellowship and enmity, life and death, inclusivism or exclusivism. So that should define our religion now, as well as our hermeneutics. The third very important issue today, brought about also by globalization, is the phenomenon of migration. In Europe at one time, somebody I was listening yesterday in Germany, At the beginning, they have a culture of welcome. The movement of migration, the collapse of borders and frontiers, this time not only because they need workers, but because of sanctuary, because of poverty. And this phenomenon is exacerbated by a new surge of isolationism, of xenophobia, of once again closing our borders and creating new walls that divide peoples and nations. The new boat people from North Africa going to Spain and then going to Italy. That's another type of migrants. The other migrants will be coming from Syria and Iraq and the rest, and Turkey moving to Europe. The other migrants will be coming from the southern border of the US, moving north of the America, and that's why Mr. Trump would like to build a wall. Building walls that will divide people, and our religions, our texts, our message need to address this. Our hermeneutic should be within the context of these migrants. There is an Islamic spiritual tradition, as well as the Christian traditions, of course. At the end of Matthew's narrative, you see, of feeding the hungry, giving things to the thirsty, clothes to the naked, shelter to the homeless. In Arabic, there is one expression that captures this all, and that is takrim daif. That is similar to the exhortations of Pope Francis of mercy and compassion. Takrim daif means compassion to those who do not belong, to those who are strangers. Showing compassion and mercy. Takrim daif. Our religion, our message, our text, our relationship, will that have the capacity to proclaim takrim daif? That the migrants have welcome. Francis said every parish in Europe should adopt a family crossing the border. But not only an exhortation, but in the reading of our scriptures, in shaping our hierarchy, in shaping the structures of our religions, we need perhaps to hear once again that slogan, takrim daif. Precisely for this reason, that the new grounds for religious relationship will be a new critique of the earth, a new critique of the established order, the defined relationship between and among peoples, communities, and nations. I believe now that the core message that should define our relationship will be slogans like pluralism. Yes, we are all different. We recognize our differences. But despite the differences, the second one is collaborate. You are important, I am important, we are all important, and we collaborate. It is collaborative work today in establishing this new earth and this community. And the third slogan that I will propose is not only saving the earth, saving humanity, but also saving our common future. It is indeed very important that together we build the new ark for the survival of our species, the creation, and our common habitat, which is the earth. Thank you very much.